to be able to think clearly under threat and under fatigue and under huge pressure is a skill, and it's a skill that you learn with experience.
Hi everyone, welcome to 80% Mental. I'm Dr. Pete Olusoga, and this is a podcast all about the psychology of sport and performance. We're still going on with this series, and I'm still on a bit of a mission to explore the psychology underpinning peak performance in a whole bunch of different performance areas. So far, we've spoken to endurance athletes, motorsport athletes, strength sport athletes, coaches, singers, dancers, actors, pilots. It's been a really fascinating journey for me, trying to get to the bottom of what goes into each of these different types of performance. And I hope that you lot have enjoyed it too out there in listener land. You can go back and listen to all of those episodes if you want to at 80percentmental.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to like and share and comment and retweet, all that good social media stuff. This episode is one that I've wanted to do for ages, and I just haven't got around to it. But for a while, I wanted to do an episode on the psychology of the fight. Now, I've done a little bit of consultancy work in boxing before. I've worked with a couple of boxers, and it really is a sport that's just like no other. It's brutal. It's violent in a way that other sports aren't. There's maybe a couple of exceptions there in terms of some of the other combat sports, but when it boils down to it, it's two people trying to hit each other until one of them can't hit back anymore. But it's what it is. But it's always had and still has huge appeal. What is it that makes athletes want to take up a sport like this? What kind of mindset does it take to even get in the ring in the first place? What are the mental skills and strategies that might help prepare an athlete to compete in a sport like this? We're going to explore all of that and more in today's episode of 80% Mental. And I couldn't be more pleased to welcome my two guests this evening, who between them have an absolute ton of experience in the fight game, although in slightly different roles, which I'm hoping will make for a really interesting discussion. So without further ado, my first guest tonight is Jordan "The Thrill" Gill. Professional boxer with a record of 27 wins in 30 fights, 8 knockouts, and has held at various points in his career a Commonwealth featherweight title, a WBA international featherweight title, and a European featherweight title, which he won in one of the greatest comebacks that I've seen. Jordan Gill, welcome to 80% Mental.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, you're more than welcome. I really can't wait to pick your brains and kind of uncover some of the mental aspects of the sport. Really looking forward to hearing from you tonight. My other guest is Danny Wilson, strength and conditioning coach and co-founder of Boxing Science. Danny, welcome to 80% Mental.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having us.
You didn't get quite as long an intro as Jordan.
No, I haven't won any titles.
No, have you got a boxing nickname, though? I feel like you should have one as well.
The Wilsonator. We'll go with that one.
No, that's terrible. So, Danny, tell me a little bit about Boxing Science. What's that all about? How did that get started?
Yeah, so Boxing Science does exactly what it says on the tin. It's sports science for boxing. And, boxing often refers to the sweet science. We focus on the physical side. So how to train an athlete to achieve their peak physical performance, optimize the training process so they get into the ring in peak physical condition, but also in a safe way as well, because boxing is a very dangerous sport, as you just said. So we do a range of different stuff from strength and conditioning, physiology, research around pinpointing strengths and areas for improvement. We also do nutrition, because a big part of the training process is to make weight. As you say, that Jordan, he's won his titles at featherweight, and that's 9 stone. So he'll probably tell you later on in the podcast that he was making that weight when he was 13 years old, all the way up to being 28 years old. So it is a challenge to make weight. So nutrition's a big part of it. And then, of course, like psychology is a massive part, not only of getting into the ring and having a fight, but also the training process, because there's so many setbacks, there's so many move goalposts, and it's psychologically very tough in training camp. So hopefully I can give you an insight into that part of psychology behind the fight.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know, Danny, you've got a ton of experience working with a bunch of different boxers as well as Jordan. So hopefully you can, bring some insight into that mindset. Fun fact: Boxing Science shares a birthday with me. I'm going to be 45 on Friday. How old's Boxing Science going to be?
I mean, 9 years old.
No way.
Yeah, so we've
Wow.
been working in boxing for about 10 and a half years now. It took
Yeah.
me about 18 months to come up with the name Boxing Science and get a website. And, we've got an online platform that is accessed all over the world by coaches and athletes and everything. And we're very lucky to be working with some elite fighters as well from British, European, Commonwealth and world champions as well.
Well, between the two of you in this episode, I think it's going to be a really fascinating discussion into the psychology of the fight. So, Jordan, you've had some successes in your career. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, I'm sure. But, going right back to the beginning, what was it that made you first want to get in the ring and hit people for a living?
Well, maybe not for a living, but it sort of rolls on from amateur experience. So when I was very, very young in primary school, from the age of 4 years old, I was being taken to the boxing gym. And the reason why is because I had a lot of energy at school. I was running around causing problems. The teachers said to my mum and my dad, "Can you do something with him?" So my mum used to take me swimming before school. I'm not sure how well she taught me because I'm not the strongest swimmer now. But after school, my dad used to take me to the boxing gym. My dad was the local amateur boxing coach after a successful amateur career that he had himself. So yeah, from the age of 4, I've been knocking about in the gym. The older lads used to, punch me and make fun of me and work me over a little bit. And bit by bit, I got a little better. Watched and learned, monkey see, monkey do. And by the age of 11, I was legally allowed to have my first amateur fight. So it got serious from then, from the age of 11, having my first amateur fight. Um, One thing rolled onto another. Every year I was boxing, as many times as I could. I reached 7 national finals in 7 years of being an amateur. I won ABA title when I won the national boys clubs, a Box for England, which was a big goal of mine at the time. And by the time I was 18, I thought, I could have a good career in boxing. So I followed my dream, and here I am, a professional boxer. And it's been 10 years as a pro so far. So, like you said, I've got a wealth of experience, good and bad, in the professional sport.
So, kind of going back to some of those earlier days, then you've been boxing since you were a kid. Like, at what point do you think that you maybe started to realize how important the mental side of the sport was?
Probably not until I was a little bit older. Um, for me, it was all fun and games, really. It was just something that I did. It was my whole life. It was just part of everyday routine. And I think for me, routine is really important. And it gave me such good structure in my life because after school, with most people, go home and play PlayStation. I was every day I'd go to the gym. So I'd come home from school, dump my bags, go to the gym, and then homework would probably be done when I get home and have some food and go to sleep. So for me, it was a routine, and it was just fun, and I just enjoyed it, and it was just something to do. And when you get to sort of competitive level, not even from the start, maybe from around 13, 14, when I was finding myself in national finals, when I was representing my country, when I was in the tougher fights, in fights that I was expected to lose. That's when you sort of realize, oh, I need to think about what I'm doing here, and the nerves start hitting you, and you're not quite as fearless as you was when you're 11 years old. And I think that's when it comes into play to think, right, how do I tackle this? How do I make myself, unbeatable? And I think mentality is a big part of it.
Danny, just to kind of bring you in for a second, obviously you're your strength and conditioning coach. You heard Jordan there talk about sort of discovering perhaps some of the mental side of things. What was it that drew you to boxing as well?
Well, first of all, being 13 years old, well, I go back all the way to probably being 5 or 6 years old. A famous boxer called Prince Nazim Hamid, that was an absolute superstar.
Mhm.
He even had an annual out in 1997. Don't even know whether they make annuals anymore, but not for boxers. And I've got that still. And there's a photo of me with boxers on and with some boxing gloves, and I had a little punch bag at home, but my mum just put me off from boxing. My mum put me off from everything, really, because I think she just wanted to wrap me up in cotton wool and didn't really allow me. I wanted to go to the boxing gym because I love the team. So I was really, really keen on football up until like probably 15, 16 years old. But I had a love for training very, very early on, 12, 13 years old. I started watching the Rocky films and I just wanted to train like Rocky. I wanted to do 300 sit-ups a day. I wanted a six-pack, which my shoulders and my back hasn't thanked me for in down the line. And then when I was at university, I didn't really know what career I wanted to go down. I didn't really have that strong vision until I saw a video of Alex Ariza, who's a strength and conditioning coach, one of the first ones on the scene, working with Manny Pacquiao and Amir Khan. And I watched him train them, and I just thought that's exactly what I want to do, and that's what drew me to it. And it's an exciting sport to be in. Boxers want to work hard. It's a sport that you've got 10, 12 weeks of training, prepare for one competition, and the feeling on fight night, being in the changing room, going ringside, watching kind of your athlete that you've been working with for X amount of weeks or months or years, go and have a fight and go and achieve success. There's no bigger thrill than that. There's loads of things I could go on for the full podcast to say why I got into boxing and everything like that, but it's a huge passion of mine, and it's a passion of mine to kind of upskill athletes to help unlock their potential, but also upskill coaches so we have an impact on the wider boxing community.
Yeah. Which is the best Rocky film?
Rocky IV.
It's
No
obviously
doubt.
Rocky
I
IV.
didn't even pause.
Yeah, no, I mean, why would you? It's clearly
yeah.
Rocky IV.
Oh, we've got 3 training montages.
So, Jordan, Danny just talked there about fight night and the excitement of fight night and the preparation. Can you take me back to maybe the first competitive fight? The first time you stepped in the ring. Like, what was that like for you? I don't know how old you would have been when you had your sort of first real competitive fight.
Yeah, my first competitive fight was 11 years old. It was the 5th of October, 2005. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was fighting at a hotel in Bedford on a Monday night against a lad from Bedford who was unbeaten in 6 fights. So I was up against it. They chucked me in the deep end from the start, and I was just really excited. I just wanted to go in and do what I do in the gym in a competitive environment. And it was back in a day before the smoking ban come in, and it was a dinner show. So there's all these old blokes in suits sitting there eating a meal and smoking cigarettes. And I remember getting into the ring, and there's just waves of smoke in the air, and you could barely see the opponent. And the gloves are sort of, I think I was about 36 kilograms. My gloves were, halfway up my arm, and I won the fight. I won the fight on points, and yeah, I come away with a victory. So for me, the first time, I didn't really give it that much thought. It was just getting in there and doing the job. But I always think the first time is not the one that you get nervous. Always the second time, because the first fight, if it's a little bit hard, you know what to expect in the second fight. So my second fight, which would maybe come a couple of weeks after, I was a little bit nervous for, because the first one was quite hard, and I went in. I think I lost my second fight as well. So maybe the nerves didn't help me, but yeah, I think it's a thrill and it's exciting, especially from the age of 4 years old to 11-year old. Having that long in the gym without actually competing at that level, for me was frustrating, because I felt ready to fight from maybe 7 or 8 years old, but I had to wait and had to bide my time. So for me, the first time was just exciting.
Do you still feel that? Is it the same sort of nervous excitement? Is it the same feeling now, or is it different?
It's similar but different. I still get excited, sometimes more than others, but there's a lot of different pressures now, and there shouldn't be. But I think sometimes when something becomes so important to you, then you can build it up and it becomes bigger than, maybe unhelpful in the way that you approach it, in the fact that, if the projection of your life depends on the outcome of this one night. And that's quite a lot of pressure that, people don't go into a job at Tesco's every day thinking that, my performance on this till, checking out these groceries, is going to affect the course of my life, and that's what you have to deal with. So, it's not a steady job. It's not, there's no guarantees, and it's it's quite hard to deal with sometimes, and it's a far cry from being 11 years old and fighting in leisure centres and, workmen's clubs, or at hotels, and the result not really mattering.
So the pressure and the fact that your career, your livelihood, kind of hinges or can hinge anyway on this sort of 1 hour's worth of competition. Like, footballer, they get a chance next week or the next game to kind of go and redeem themselves, I guess. But the pressure that you have there, your career depends on this one thing. So that's kind of a huge sort of mental challenge, I guess, for you. What are some of the other mental challenges of the sport?
I think there's so many. There's so many pressures and there's so many challenges. One of the things that you just said is, a footballer gets a shot next week or maybe midweek to claw it back. And, boxing is a very rare sport where the ratio of training to competition is massive. So you, at this level, you might fight, 2 to 3 times a year. So all year round, you're training and you're working your ass off, and you only get one opportunity to show what you're made of. And there's a saying in boxing, you're only as good as your last fight. And, that plays out in your mind, thinking, you've got to perform, you've got to do well to move on and carry on going up the ladder. So yeah, I think it's very important. There's other challenges as well. The training is intense. It's, widely regarded as the toughest sport in the world, physically, probably mentally as well. So you have to prepare your body for those challenges. You have to prepare your body to have a fist fight with somebody for 36 minutes. And, it's a very tough sport. So, the training is very tough, and that brings different challenges as well. So, like overtraining, managing your training schedule, possible injuries, which is, common. I don't think many fighters go into a fight 100%, and that's always because of injuries that you have to manage. So that's extra pressure. Um, yeah, it's just there's different challenges in the way that your opponent was gonna come into the fight and approach their tactics against you, because every fight's different. No one fighter that you're gonna fight is the same, and it's a sport where there's so many variables. There's so many things that could possibly go wrong. Um, there's you can't usually control whether you're going to get a cut in a fight. You can't usually control whether you're going to get injured in camp. You can't usually control whether your hand's going to break in the first round. You can't control all these things, but I think it's important to control what you can control, and things like making sure that your nutrition is on point to make a massive challenge, which is making weight as easy as possible, to make sure that you refuel as well as possible, making sure that you train as hard as possible, but not too much, which is a fine balance. And yeah, doing everything in your power to give you the best opportunity of winning and performing on the night.
Danny, Jordan was just talking there about the training aspect and the kind of intense physicality of the sport, the fact that you train for 10, 12 weeks, maybe fight 3 times in a year. What's your take on mindset in boxing? You've worked with a ton of different fighters. What kind of different things do you see in their sort of mental approach to that tough physical training?
Well, where do I start? Well, let's start at the fight to start off with, because obviously it's something that I'm not experiencing because I've never boxed. But imagine if for people that are listening, probably most people aren't boxers. Most people have had about a handful of fights, probably at school. But if you think about like the last kind of confrontation that you had, whether it's road rage or somebody's jumped in the queue or something like that, you get your heart pumping and you get mad and everything like that. And that's basically what a boxer can go through in terms of like somebody going across a ring wanting to take your head off, and you've got to manage so many different like kind of psychological processes, as in like you can't go mad and just go over and go and try and knock them out, because obviously they're going to be skilled, they're going to be able to counter you. So you've got to be in an emotional state where you're aroused but not too much. You've got a certain amount of excitement and anxiety, but obviously that's not too much as well, so you don't go too much. So, and then leading up to that fight is the training camp, where you've got so many different things, so many different setbacks. What Jordan was saying there, control the controllables, is something that I've said so many times to Jordan himself and to many other boxers, because boxing is a sport like no other. Start of football season, you get your fixture list. You know, whether when you're home and away on certain dates. Boxing, you're constantly waiting for that fight day. So sometimes I've been in the gym and I've started training camp, and it's an 8-week training camp, and that's gone into a 6-month training camp because fight dates keep getting pushed back and everything like that. All you've got to do is kind of control what you can control, and that's your nutrition, that's your training, and also training your psychological mindset as well.
Mm.
Again, boxing is a sport where you've got people on Twitter saying you're only as good as your last fight, or saying you're a bum, or saying you're not going to win that fight, you're going to get knocked out. And I remember a certain thing with Jordan going into his Commonwealth title fight, and we're wandering about this like London, and we're going to WH Smith's, and I go to Jordan like, why are you going to WH Smith's? It's like, I'm going to look at the boxing news. So he goes to the boxing news and he looks at what the prediction is, and he's just flicking through. The next minute, he just chucks the boxing news down and he walks off. And I go, Jordan, what's up? He goes, they said I'm going to get knocked out late on in the fight. And he's walking off. He's like annoyed because he thinks that basically they think that I'm not good enough. But then I remember walking behind him and his dad going to me, what do you think's going to happen? And I said, he'll stop him between round 7 and 9. And what happened, Jordan?
Round 7, spot on, mate.
Round 7. So with that, you've got so many external influences, but you've only got to focus on the opinions that count. And that's the people that truly know you and what you're capable of.
That's one of those things about that sport, isn't it? Everybody's got an opinion. I mean, I think that's kind of the same about a lot of sports, isn't it? But everybody's got an opinion. Everybody kind of thinks that they know what you're going to do. You know, tell me, Jordan, how do you block out some of that noise? You know, Danny just said that he went and sort of read the magazine. Other athletes talk about just getting off social media altogether, just kind of literally blocking everything out. What's your process for kind of trying to stay focused and stay on track and just tune out some of that noise?
I think for me, like Danny says, the people around you that know you well, they're the opinions that matter. They're the opinions that you listen to and the opinions that you value. So everybody else, you acknowledge it and treat it all the same. So I can go down my Twitter feed before a fight and I'll have 50 people saying, oh, you're going to get knocked out, you're useless. And I'll have 50 people saying, come on, Jordan, I know you're going to do it. And I look at every comment and I acknowledge them all and I treat them exactly the same. So for me, them saying that I'm going to get knocked out and those saying that I'm going to do it, it's I acknowledge it. I'm like, yeah, cool, no worries. And the people I could probably count on my one hand, how many people's opinion that I value in boxing, and they're the people that I listen to. But that comes with experience. It comes with going through that process and learning that way. So when I was in WH Smith, I read the boxing news and said, "Oh, it's a bit too early for Jordan. He's going to get knocked out late on." I was fuming. I walked out of that. I remember storming out of WH Smith, thinking, "I'll show them bastards. You watch what I do to him now." And maybe in that instance, it might have helped me because it might have put a rocket up my ass and give me a little bit of motivation to do a good job on it. And sometimes you need that, but I've learned to sort of mellow out a little bit and not be a little bit not be too hot headed. And I think for my style of boxing, that's helpful.
Learning from experience. So you'll kind of process it. You'll kind of actively maybe seek out some of those opinions, some of those social media opinions, but your experience has taught you how to listen to the ones that matter, how to kind
Yeah,
of block out the
definitely.
ones that don't. Yeah.
I think in the past, for example, the Ryan Doyle fight when I won the Commonwealth title, a lot of people wrote me off and said, and I was thinking, I think I'm 10 times better than this fella. Like, am I deluded? So you start reading the comments thinking, like, to see where, most people were thinking, what the polls are saying. You sort of judge them and you think maybe I am deluded. But deep down but it's sort of just looking for any bit of any little bit of information you can just to see what the general public's thoughts are. But the older you get and the more experience you get, you sort of just don't care and you just go in and do your job and it will be what it will be.
This is 80% Mental. I'm here with Jordan Gill and Danny Wilson, the Wilsonator, to give him his boxing nickname that he's just given himself. And we're talking about the psychology underpinning the sport of boxing. I want to come back to the kind of real tough physical nature of some of the training. So, forgetting the fight for a moment, just the training leading up to the fight can be like intensely demanding. Jordan, what's your mindset on an 8 to 12 week training camp when you're going to be in it? You're in the trenches. It's going to be tough. It's going to be horrible. What's your mindset? What's your approach to that part of the sport?
Just keep turning up. Just keep turning up and keep doing what you're there to do. At the end of the day, this is a job that I chose. This is, I've put myself in this position. Sometimes I regret it, but you've made that choice now and it's too late. And, I always turn up, like Danny said, out the 8 years, you can probably count on one hand the amount of times that, I've bailed on him. And, there's probably been loads of times when I've had that much of a bad day. You wish I never turned up because I ruined everyone else's day as well. But that's all part of the process. And yeah, I think for me, just turning up, making sure, I think sometimes your alarm can go off and you're in bed and you think, oh, I'm proper done in today. I ain't got nothing left to give. But when you get up, you have a couple of coffees, you get in the gym, start loosening off. It's never as bad as you think. So sometimes when you get up, you feel great. It's worse than you think. So, you just have to treat every day the same. Get in the gym, do what you're there to do. You have to look at the positives. It's going to be hard, but it's a choice that you made. You think I'm not out in the rain bricklaying, or I'm not carrying scaffolding about, doing something that I wouldn't enjoy, personally. And I think that helps as well. So, you know, I know at the end of that 8, 10, 12 weeks, however long it is, I know that there's a goal. The end goal is to win the fight and progress in my career. And for me, that is so important. And I know what it takes to win at that level. I know what it takes to get my body in condition to give myself the best chance of achieving that goal. And I know that I need to be a supreme athlete. I need to be supremely fit. I need to have a nutrition on point. I need to get a good sleep. I need to, you know, do everything possible. Sometimes even before I think about karma and I see a bit of litter on the floor and I put it in the bin all the way up leading to the fight because I think I'm doing good things. The good things are going to come, and you just have to, you just have to go and do it. And I think for me, turning up, giving everything every day, is all I can do, and that's controlling what I can control. And everything else is out of my control. Whether my opponent pulls out, whether the promoters change the date of the fight, whether you get cut in sparring, whether your sparring partners pull out, whether, you twist your ankle on a treadmill and you have to get on the bike. It is what it is. Just plow through,
Mm.
go through the trenches, tread through that heavy water, go through the mud and get to the end goal, because that's what's important. That's what's going to progress my career. That's what's going to put money in the bank. That's what's going to win the titles.
I think what's interesting for me there is you talked about, and in psychology, we talk about process goals and outcome goals, but also the kind of bigger, like the bigger picture, the why stuff, why you're doing it. And you kind of talked about all of that stuff then. How much are you thinking about outcomes? Like, how much are you motivated by, the outcome of the fight and winning the fight, versus how much are you motivated by, those daily processes, the kind of falling in love with the process. And, you talked about good karma and just kind of daily doing these things and that are kind of moving you towards that. How much are you motivated by each of those things, would you say?
I think probably equally motivated, but at the same time, the end result is what you're thinking about when you're doing the daily processes, and that's why you're doing the daily processes. So,
Mm.
you it's not the fact that you learn to fall in love with the daily process, it's the fact that it has to be a lifestyle. You've been ingrained in the sport from such an early age. To get to a high level, you have to be so committed and you have to be so resilient and so dedicated that it just becomes a lifestyle and it's just a part of your everyday routine. And so if you didn't love it, then you probably wouldn't be in that position anyway. So you have
Mm.
to love it to do it, because you'd have to be crazy to hate it and still do it, because there's plenty of easier ways to make money. So I think for me, the end goal is something that I frequently think of. It's
Mm.
something that replays in my head. Me lifting my hand at the end of the fight, me knocking out an opponent, me, uh, performing well is something that rolls through my head, countless times every single day when I'm in training. And that can be even when I've not got an opponent. It can be, how I'm thinking about, the moves that I do in sparring. There could be, no opponent in the ring, but when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about the moves that I'm doing in sparring. I'm thinking about pulling off, things that people are going to be impressed by, things that's going to look good, and things that's going to make the commentators talk nice things about me instead of horrible things.
So there's some like visualization going on there as well, some imagining outcomes, imagining successes, as part of that process. Danny, you've worked with like a bunch of different boxers. Without naming names, talk to me about some of the different approaches. Jordan's obviously highly committed. You talked about commitment versus motivation before. Like, what are some of the different approaches that you've seen in terms of mindset during that sort of 10, 12 weeks of just hard graft?
I think boxing is like a sport like no other, as in like they all come from all different backgrounds, ethnicities, sexes, different ages, different experiences that they've had, different ways that they've got into the sport, whether it's the dad taking them to the gym or they've been a naughty kid at school or they've just started doing it for a laugh and then end up being quite good at it. So there's so many different things that you see in terms of like psychological processes, the goals that they have, the things that make them tick. And I think like probably what I'd say on this point is that they have to have probably a solid 8 or 9 out of 10 across a load of different things in terms of discipline, in terms of confidence, in terms of being focused under hard conditions. I think that that's probably one thing. And then like you've got other people that do everything wrong in terms of their strength training, in terms of their probably their sparring, the way that they live the life outside the ring, but they just have that ingrained mentality to go and have a fight. So I worked with an athlete that basically everything went wrong in training camp, but then
Mm.
they just went in, and I was just like, this guy should be pulling out of the fight, really. But he didn't care, and he just got in and had a 12-round war, and he lost the fight. But I just sat back and just thought, he's a little bit crazy, but this guy has got unbelievable mentality when it comes to fighting. Probably not when it comes to training and this following things that needs to be done.
Yeah.
But when it comes to fighting, he's not scared whatsoever. So it's hard to kind of encompass it into all one thing. But I think like the thing is with me, and like I'm thinking before coming onto this podcast, how like a S&C coach can have a role in psychology for boxing. Um, and a few different things. One, giving them the results in terms of their physical performance, so they know that they're improving in terms of the process. So we're saying, talking about the process, we're talking about Jordan having confidence in how he's prepared for a fight. So we take numbers all the way through, and every training session that we do at Boxing Science just keeps getting harder and harder, and it feels like you're not getting anywhere. But when we compare them from the start of training camp or last year or 3 years and show the 10, 20, 30% changes, that can give them a lot of confidence going into this fight in the shape of your life. And you've got evidence to support that. And that
Yes.
can help boost them up. And as
So
well,
you're providing data that, like, it's hard data that is kind of
yeah, definitely hard data, hard evidence, knowing that and that athlete's got full confidence in their physical capabilities going into that ring. Another one is to put them through the trenches in terms of the hard training. We do something called 30-second max out sprints, which is 30 seconds flat out with 3 minutes recovery. And that takes you to a place where you don't want to go. So what you feel like kind of burning in your legs when you go out on a road run, this is like 2 times, 3 times more than that. So it's a physically and psychologically tough session. It takes them to what we call a death zone. So, which is not ethically right, but that's but it sounds good. So when somebody goes into a fight and they start going through the gears and they have the confidence to put the shots together to increase that intensity, to go to surf a little bit and try and get their opponent out there, they know that physical feeling of the legs being heavy, the arms being heavy,
yeah,
but having the confidence that and being able to recognize that they can work through that. There's often fighters that go through that same situation and punch themselves out, and they haven't experienced that before. So they feel like their arms are heavy, their legs are heavy, they don't know how to move their legs. They're thinking, oh no, I'm really gone now, rather than Jordan going back to the corner, recognizing he actually said what his blood lactate level was. He says, oh, good 17, 18 after that. He said that to me in the changing room after. So he recognized what that feeling was like. So he knew, right, I know what it is. I'll just have a bit of a break and then I'll go again. I know how to hold my shape. I know I'll just kind of keep a low tempo for the next minute, minute and a half, and then I'll recover later on. Whereas a lot of other boxers that haven't gone through that might panic, might think that they're totally gassed out for the rest of the fight. They might lose their shape, and that can end up losing them the fight. So there's a lot of different things that we do in training camp that has a physical kind of process and physical outcome, but also can have like benefits towards psychological performance as well.
That's really interesting for me. Like you say, there's obviously a physiological benefit and these adaptation responses going on there. People are getting physically stronger and faster and fitter. But psychologically, there's a whole load of kind of bodily awareness happening there as well.
Absolutely. And we did a sit down interview with Johnny Nelson about 6 years ago. And he was talking about not going running with your headphones on and being focused during hard situations. And that's basically what boxing is, because when they're having a fight and they get 2-3 rounds in, the body feels like nothing else like that they ever kind of it's hard to replicate that fight like scenario. So they've got to stay so focused when they're finding it physically tough. So that's what we do at the gym. We allow music because it raises motivation. But we take them to a place where they've got to hit a certain number. They've got to focus on what they need to do, whilst their body's wanting to basically stop, wanting to quit. One time, an athlete was doing a circuit. He had a world title fight in 3 weeks' time. So like that is like your last hard session. And I came in and they were like, "Oh, he's feeling a bit tired today, so we're gonna only do 3 sets." And I just went, "Nah, you're doing 5. He's got a world title fight in 3 weeks. It's time to go."
Mm.
And I got that particular athlete through that session, and he just looked at me and like nodded at me, like because he like recognised that I got him through that tough session and that he needed it. And you've got to kind of weigh up. Sometimes you've got your sports science head, but also you've got you're preparing somebody for a fight head at the same time. Don't know what kind of head that is, but yeah, you've got your sports science head that's saying, right, we want to have the most effective training response, but you've also got another side here that this can be psychological benefiting this athlete going into a fight.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me. I did an episode of the podcast with Dave Hembrough and Nick Ward about bringing psychology into the training room, how strength and conditioning coaches can use and utilize some psychology. And it sounds like you've got a really big role in, or it sounds like you've got a lot of awareness about how you can use your role as the S&C coach to really perhaps shape some of the psychology and the mindset of the boxers there. Jordan, tell me a little bit about what that does for you. Danny talked about going through that tough physical training, the kind of bodily awareness that gives you, and knowing how you can respond in certain situations, knowing what your body's doing. What does that do for you psychologically going into a fight?
I think it's a massive boost. I think, it really helps you understand your body more and know what you're capable of, know when you're able to push and when you're needing a little bit of a rest in a fight. I think that, it gives you a lot of confidence. How well your training camp has gone, for me is a massive confidence boost. Um, there's certain training camps where I know I've given everything, and if you go into that ring knowing that you couldn't have done any more, then there's nothing else you can do. When you're in the shape of your life and you're as fit as you possibly can be, then all there's left to do is perform. And when you've done all the training required, there's only one man in front of you. So you've overcome all these obstacles in training. You've sparred all these people that have come from all over the country and sometimes across waters to spar with you. You've overcome all those guys, and there's just the final boss there, and you've got to win that fight, and it'll all be worth it. It'll all have paid off all that pain, all that hardship that you've put your body through, and the sleepless nights, and the early mornings, and the blood, sweat, and tears, as they say. It'll all be worth it if you beat the final boss, and that's the way that I see it.
Do you think, because you've both talked about a number of different factors and the different approaches that maybe different people have. If I use the phrase "fighter's mindset," do you think there's such a thing? Do you think there's such a thing that kind of people who do this sport have in common, or is it just totally different? Is it just individuals, different approaches, different mindsets? What's your take on that?
For me, I think that, as a rule of thumb, everyone has to have a little bit of dog in them, a little bit of, grit. I think to get to a certain level in boxing, especially, but most sports, you have to have a competitive edge and mentality which would make you feel pain if you didn't win or didn't perform well. And I think that's probably common across most boxers. I'd say that the mentality is probably very similar, but different approaches on how they approach the fight from a mental side, and how they process their thoughts towards a fight and training are very different, but with the same mindset.
What about you, Danny? Any thoughts on that?
I think that I agree with Jordan in terms of like having that dog in them, and I don't know how you say great determination to get through that hard, and the willingness to never quit. Now, I'll tell you now, we do a test called the 30-15 test, which is 30 seconds on, 15 seconds off. We start at 8 kilometers an hour. We go up by 0.5 each time. And we say the world champion zone is between 22 and 24 kilometers an hour. So that's like literally just sprinting on the treadmill for 30 seconds. You get off for 15 seconds and then you go again 30 seconds. Now, in that test, the people that have performed the best on that test have been people that have achieved something in the sport in terms of world titles, European titles, Commonwealth titles, British titles. And it's not only the number that impresses me, the top level number, it's about like kind of how much they actually pushed it. So literally running until they can't do any more. There's so many times where I've seen athletes like that when they find it hard, they just step off and they go, can't do any more, and just and just quit. Whereas like the top performers have gone and like literally thinking this treadmill is not going to beat me. And there's one athlete in particular that weren't that fit, and I could always guess or guesstimate what level they'd finish on, depending on what their heart rate was at a certain level. So like as soon as they get up to like the red zone, so that's 90% maximum heart rate, they've got about 5 or 6 levels in them. So I go, oh yeah, they're only going to make level 18. And then they end up making level 22, which is another 8 levels beyond what I guess, just because they had that dogged determination to get through it. And I think that is the common factor that I've seen in the people that I've done the best in out of the sport, the people that I've trained, they've just got that willingness to keep going no matter what.
Tell you what, there's a research study in that. Is there a correlation between how far people push on the 30-15 test and how successful their careers are?
They've got
someone get on it.
Yeah.
So this is the 80% Mental podcast, and I'm here with Jordan, the Thrill Gill, and Danny, the Wilsonator Wilson. We've been talking about the psychology of boxing. That's your name now, Danny. I'm sorry.
I regret saying that now. I regret it.
Forever. We've been talking about the psychology of the fight and the fighter's mindset, whether there's such a thing, some of the different psychological challenges of the sport. We're talking about determination just then, and Jordan, I want to come back to your European title fight, your comeback victory that I mentioned right at the start. And you and I have spoken about this before in different places. But tell me a little bit about that fight. For the people who don't know, you can go and kind of look it up on YouTube. But it was something pretty spectacular, wasn't it?
Yeah, for a spectator, it was. Yeah,
it was perhaps not for you, but
it was a fight that had a bit of everything. There was ups and downs. I started the fight a little bit sloppy. I was getting caught a bit. I started to get a little bit of success, and then I went into the fight with certain injuries. I had a knee injury that affected my stability, and in one of my spars before the fight, I'd perforated my eardrum, so I ended up with 2 perforated eardrums in the fight. I was knocked down. My balance was all over the shop. I was DDT'd in an illegal wrestling move, and the opponent wasn't deducted any points or penalised at all. And because of my balance and because of everything that had gone on, I'd end up being on the ropes, just defending myself and trying to find a shot to knock him out for maybe 2 or 3 rounds. And I finally got the shot when it looked like all hope had gone and people were calling for me to be pulled out and for the fight to be stopped. I knocked him out with a big right hand, and
Mm.
yeah, it was a pretty spectacular, probably memorable night for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a fight that people talk to me a lot about. Probably my most memorable night and my biggest achievement as well. So to win a European title, which is only a step away from the world title, is in spectacular fashion in a fight that everyone's going to remember. Is a big moment in my career. But at the same time, because I've got that mentality, it's never enough. I always want more.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about controlling the controllables, and you just said there that both before the fight, kind of everything that could go wrong pretty much went wrong. During the fight, lots of stuff went wrong. So where do you find that? Where do you find that determination to just keep on going and keep on going and keep on going? Where does that come from?
I guess it's either in you or not. I think everyone's the way they are for a reason. I think everybody's experiences in life mold them into the person that they are. And I think I've always been brought up, to be tough. We don't moan, we don't whine. We get on, and we get the job done. And for me, I've never had any quit in me. I would stay until the job's done. Don't want to be pulled out of a fight. I never always want to finish. I always want, even if I was gonna lose the fight, I was always wanted to finish the fight. And that's just a matter of pride. I think I always thought, there's no way this guy's gonna beat me. In my head, even though I was on the ropes, I had one knee, I had a dodgy hand, I had two perforated eardrums. I thought, oh, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you. And it's like that mentality when you're on that 30-15 treadmill. I was willing to lose all the skin on my shins to not step off that treadmill. And
Yeah.
that's just, I'm willing to bend my nose in all have my nose broken in 20 different places to win this fight. I'm prepared to be DDT'd. I'm prepared to be knocked down. I'm prepared to get back up. I'm prepared to do anything to win this fight because that's my goal. That's what I've worked towards for 20 odd years, and that's what the challenge in front of me brings. So for me, I'll win at all costs, and whatever it takes to get to the end goal, I'll walk through walls to do it.
I think that's one of the differences, though, isn't it, with this sport than other sports? You just said there about being prepared to go to places where a lot of people wouldn't necessarily be prepared to go to in order to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of boxers they'll come out with the line they're willing to die in the ring, and
Mm.
for most civilians, it may be sound stupid to them. Like it's a sport. Why would you want to die? It's only boxing. And obviously nobody wants to die, but when you're in that mindset, a fighter's mindset, as you said, you have to go into that ring. Anything can happen. That every fight is your last fight because you could be coming out in a wheelchair. You could have a career-ending injury. You could, get knocked out and not get another chance. You could, you know, anything can happen. So you have to be willing to die in the ring. Obviously, it's not ideal, but you got to be willing to do anything, whatever it
Mm.
takes to get the victory.
What are your thoughts here, Danny? You think that sort of attitude, that sort of mindset can be shaped, developed, or as Jordan seems to be saying, do you think it's something that you just either have got or you haven't got?
I think there's a lot of psychological processes that can be improved and can be worked on, but that kind of doggedness and that willingness to never quit, I think it's very hard to instill into some athletes because some athletes just like come from such a background where they're just like it's ingrained into them. So like having a fight is like it comes as natural to them as us having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee,
Mm.
and they have that kind of. I was listening to something the other day where it's saying about how important having a core belief is within the business, and I think having a core belief within a fighter and keep revisiting that is so important. Almost like if you keep revisiting that core belief of having that determination, having that never quit, never say die attitude, then you can keep on revisiting that, and that obviously needs to be instilled from an early age. Now,
Yeah.
this brings me on to working with Jordan. Now, there's only been two times where I thought that Jordan might hit me with a right hand or a left hook. With the way that he's looked at me, one was in Chicago, and we were walking down the street, and I went, oh, "I'm starving," and he looked at me. He's taking a phone now. And then he looked at me, and he went, "You don't know the meaning of starving." But I thought it was going to hit me. How mad he looked in his eyes, because he was dieting for a fight in 3 weeks' time. And I'm never going to say that again. So we've had a running joke
I
about
was
that.
starving, proper
He was,
starving.
he was proper starving. And then the other time is that on a back squat, he was in Fort Ventura in 2016, and he was, I think he was squatting about 100 kilos, so that's pretty good for the weight that he's at. And he was supposed to do 2 reps. He did 2 reps. He did it great. And then he did the 3rd rep, and I had to spot him. But we measure each speed, so we know whether an athlete has got another rep in them or not. And Jordan's speed showed that he had another rep in him, but he just didn't get the technique quite right. But I turned around to him and said, "You bottled that." And he turned to me, and I thought he was going to hit me, and he says, "You what?" "I never bottle it. I never bottle it." So anyway, the next set, he hit 3 reps. But then he would like beat his chest to the camera and said, "Never bottle it." So that's been a running theme, like in the sessions, never bottle it. So he had his first fight on Sky Sports. He was against a very experienced former Commonwealth champion, Jason Cunningham, who's now gone on to win British and European titles as well. So it was a really tough fight for Jordan, like first 10 rounder, and he dominated the fight. And then the last round, Jason Cunningham came out and he was throwing about 30, 40 punches around. And then in the last round, he threw 160 punches. He just went at Jordan, like basically throwing the kitchen sink. And it was like what we called a suicide round, where basically Jordan just went and had a war with him. And I got into the ring after, and went in for a photo, and I just looked at Jordan. Jordan just went, "Never bottle it," like that. and there's actually a clip on TV where he says it to me, and I just look at him, just like, "This guy's crazy." And then he said it again after the Kareem Murphy fight, a European title fight. He just walked off. Everyone's going mad, and he's shouting, "Never bottle it." And shouted at Eddie, and Eddie's probably thinking, "What does that even mean?" but it's like a running. It's a funny thing, and like we can like have a funny story about it. But that's his inner core belief that he keeps going to. So in that hard situation, he was never going to bottle it. We're never going to bottle it. And the main thing is, he had the determination to go through, but he did it with brains. He did it with smarts. He was picking off shots. He didn't just like find a punch out of nowhere. He was setting up that shot for 2-3 rounds. One of the most impressive things of that fight is when he got DDT'd. So those people that don't know it, it's a famous wrestling move where basically Jordan had his full weight go onto the top of his head, and it almost like he should have been knocked out from it, really. And also the guy should have been disqualified.
Yeah.
But within like 5-6 seconds, he was up and having to fight again. So he'd just been DDT, totally crazy situation. And the first shot that he did, he rolled a right hand and landed a left hook to the body. And I've watched that shot so many times. Like, so many people watch the right hand that knocked out the guy, but I've watched that shot so many times because I just think, like, you've just gone through the most kind of adverse situation in a boxing ring ever. And like, whenever someone, like we're talking about, like most people, like if they get into a fight situation, they won't be able to think. They'll see the red mist and they'll just start throwing bombs. And when people are in that last chance saloon in a boxing fight, that's what they mostly do. Whereas Jordan worked on a very defensive and a counterpunch tool there. that had to have a lot of smarts and wit about him to be able to land that. And then he took that same energy when he had to be basically in the corner for 2 or 3 rounds. And he's being smart. He's making him punch. He's making him miss. He's keeping him at a certain range to be able to set up that right hand.
Yeah.
People call it a lucky punch, but if you go and watch that fight back, he was setting up that punch for 2 or 3 rounds, and the way the little things that we're doing, like touching with a jab, stabbing with a jab downstairs, left up to the body, that's all to kind of to land that right hand. Now, why I'm going into the technical aspects behind that is because he was doing it under a very, very stressful situation where he perforated both eardrums. His knee, when he'd been knocked down, he'd been DDT'd. His career is on the line. He had all that going into basically that situation where he had to technically and tactically break this guy down, and then ended up knocking him out with the right hand.
Yeah. And I suppose that comes back to what we were talking about earlier, going through that real tough physical training, going into the death zone, or, like pushing yourself as far as you can, but having that body awareness during that and being able to make decisions and to concentrate and to focus during that. It's not just kind of going hell for leather and just solve your problems with aggression, really being able to understand and concentrate and focus while going through that. So that training prepares you for that almost. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it does. I think physically and mentally it prepares you, but also the experience of going through that before. Obviously, no one's going to go through that specific situation,
Sure.
but going through fights, because people look at fights and think, oh, you got to be aggressive, you got to be, angry, you've got to throw the kitchen sink. But what they don't understand is how fit you have to be and how you have to pace it, because these fights are 12-round fights. It's 36 minutes of standing in front of somebody and having a scrap. Go on the bag for 36 minutes, see how long you last throwing bombs. It's a long time. So
Yeah.
I think the pacing side of it is, helps you control that mind, and to be able to think clearly under threat and under fatigue and under huge pressure is a skill, and it's a skill that you learn with experience. And I think, sometimes when you get that good at it, I feel like I'm very good at keeping my cool in extreme circumstances. And I think sometimes when you get to a level where you're that good at something, it can ruin the rest of your life, because the level of adrenaline that I've experienced, that I feel like not many people in the world will have experienced that level of adrenaline when I'm standing at the end of a stage looking to go into a ring and my music's playing. There's 20,000 people looking at me, well, solely on me, and I'm about to have a fight with somebody that's been in world title fights or been world champion. The buzz that you feel is electric, and something that you may never get again, something that people may never experience. So when you experience everyday things, you don't really get up for much else, because your level of adrenaline's been that high that everyday things that excite normal people don't really excite you. Which, for example, at the weekend, me and my friend went and climbed Snowdon. He said to me, "That's amazing, wasn't it? That was really good." I say, "It's only walking, mate." Like, and for for, for me, it's going to take a lot for me to get excited about things, because that level of adrenaline, that peak that I've been at, it sort of ruins the rest of your life.
But I mean, it's a kind of a sort of funny story about climbing Snowdon. But on a more serious note, what impact does that have? Do you feel the need to replicate that? And I assume boxers who retire go through exactly what you've just talked about, trying to replicate that adrenaline rush.
I think so. I think it's a big problem. I think there should be a lot more aftercare for retired boxers, and it's why you see so many people finish boxing, start getting in pub fights, or start turning to alcohol, start turning to drugs. Looking for a thrill, looking to have that adrenaline rush, to have that dopamine hit that they've been desiring, and something that they've been getting regularly from boxing. They try and replace it with other things. People might put on 10 stone after a career. People like Nassim Hamid have gone a beast from superstardom, out in the midst to just probably eating himself into an early grave. And I think you see it time and time again with drug addiction, alcohol abuse. People crashing fast cars because they want that adrenaline rush.
Just trying to
Uh,
replicate that
you
high
try and
almost.
replicate, you try and look for that rush. There's every chance that after my career I'll look for it and try and do a skydive, or I'm gonna try and do something illegal though, not like everyone
I was
else.
going to say, hopefully you do something a little bit more constructive, a little bit less destructive, maybe. Jordan, you just talked a little bit earlier about you kind of standing there ready to walk into the ring. The lights are going, the crowd's there. Talk to me a little bit about your pre-fight routine.
Usually we try and keep it the way it is in the gym. When I come into the gym, usually it's the same faces there. I don't have really, all my mates in the change rooms like some people would think. There's always, staff from the promoters or the TV that are there because they have to be there, and you sort of shut them out. But I go into the gym, it's the same faces that I see on fight night. We go in, do the same routine, do our mobility like we do before training, put our hand wraps on, warm up on the pads, which is something that we do in training. So it's sort of very similar to replicate the training into the fight night. But obviously there's extra pressures from, this is the moment that you've been waiting for. You know that this is what it's all the build up, all those hard sessions are for. So you just keeping your cool. You going through the fight in your head. You know you've prepared well. You know that you've done everything asked of you. So you've left no stone unturned. So you sort of talking yourself through that, and talking your way through the first round, thinking go out, establish your jab, move to your left or move to your right. You're going through your tactics in your head, but try not to overcomplicate things and try not to get too anxious about it, and just go out and be yourself and express yourself in the way that you've been practicing to do.
I love that. So much in there from a psychological perspective, trying to keep everything the same from, preparation and being in the gym to being on fight night. There's a little bit of imagery again, that sort of mental rehearsal of kind of almost planning out what your approach is going to be in the first round. There's some anxiety management stuff there as well. Like fascinating. Danny, what's your role in this as well? Because I know that you're involved in some of the pre-fight stuff as well with some of the boxers that you work with.
Yeah, I don't do much in terms of like kind of psychological and motivational, something like that. It's more just kind of keeping that routine, doing the mobility. One of my main jobs is to bring the speaker. So in fact, I was going down to Birmingham the other week, and I was like, I'm probably about 10 miles down the road, and I forgot the speaker, so I turned back to go to go again, because I was thinking that is my only job, to bring the speaker.
Yeah.
I get the playlist set up for each fighter. So Jordan likes a bit of Motown, bit of Michael Jackson, a bit of funky stuff.
Nice.
It's what he plays in the gym, so that's what he wants to play before the fight.
Yeah.
Just like kind of taking any kind of outer thoughts away from what he needs to focus on. So you don't need to be focusing about what music's on. That's covered. You don't need to be thinking about what he needs to do for the warm-up. Even if he does it every session, I'll still coach them through it. Right, this exercise next, this exercise next. So he doesn't have to think about what exercises having to go next. He doesn't have to think about anything but what he has to do in the fight.
Yeah. So you're reducing that kind of cognitive load, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll know what they need at certain times. So they'll have carbohydrate gel just before they go on the pads. Before they go and make the ring walk, they'll have the caffeine gum. So I've got all that prepared. I know exactly what's happening. So
Giving away all our secrets.
Yeah. Just taking like any kind of, like, say, cognitive load away from them, and to make sure that everything flows and nothing really goes wrong in that pre-fight warm-up. And then just like on the day of the fight or a couple of days before the fight, it's just being chilled out, relax. I often take the mick out myself instead of taking the mick out of other people. So I might have a joke and a laugh. I've become a bit of a butt of the jokes a little bit, but that's kind of make sure that there is a bit of jovial atmosphere there. I often take on Jordan's fight week. It's often Jordan's dad or his good mate Paddy that we have a laugh with.
Trying to take some of that tension away from.
Make it. We always have a good laugh on fight week, and then after the fight, we'll have some Mars bar flapjack that Jordan's mum makes. So it's like a little bit of a routine.
Yeah. What's your ring walk music, Jordan? Or does it change?
Well, it changes every fight now, but for
Okay.
quite a lot of fights, I had Michael Jackson Thriller, to go with my name. But when all the documentaries come out, Sky Sports put a ban on on Thriller. So all MJ tracks actually. So
Yeah,
I
that's
usually have
fair.
something a little bit funky, something a little bit Motowny. Sometimes, what have I had before? Hold on, I'm coming. I've had a bit of Sam and Dave, all sorts.
Okay,
Say
nice.
about
Bit of Northern
that
Soul.
that time when they got your ring walk music wrong, Jordan.
Yeah, that was embarrassing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I told them to do Michael Jackson Thriller, and I didn't specifically say the radio edit. So they got like the 12-minute version from the vinyl, and it was just I had tweets after the fight saying, "Is Jordan Gill coming out to the sound of crickets?" It was shocking. It was just the sound of crickets and like creaking for about 2 minutes before the music come on. I end up just having to walk in pretty much silence. It was shocking.
What would yours be, Danny?
I've often
Arctic
thought about
Monkeys.
this. There's lots of stuff. I like a bit of Arctic Monkeys, Oasis. I don't know whether they're allowed to swear on this podcast, but there's Oasis, "Fucking in the Bushes," which is a class tune. What they walk out to, and what is played in Snatch for the bare knuckle boxing fight. So yeah, that's always been probably a tune that stands out to me for ring walk. But I often think like if there's a big crowd there, having something that they can all sing along to or something.
bit of fan support for you.
Yeah.
So this is 80% Mental, and I'm here with Jordan Gill and Danny Wilson. I hope that you lot out there are enjoying this episode. Don't forget to share it on social media. Give us a follow on Twitter at EPM Podcast or on Instagram at 80% Mental. Or better still, go to 80percentmental.com to subscribe so that you don't miss out on any more award-winning content like this. Danny, Jordan, I've started doing this thing in this podcast where I feel like the listeners need to kind of get to know the guests a little bit better. So we've talked about your boxing career, we've talked about your boxing science and your support and strength and conditioning. But I've got a little game that I want to play if you're up for it. And I've got 4 different envelopes with 4 different sets of questions in them. There's deep and meaningful. There's have you ever, either or the last time. Are you up for playing this game with me?
Go for it.
This could be dangerous.
Fantastic. All right, I'll take that as a yes, Danny. All right, so the first thing I need you to do is to pick a number between 1 and 4, and we'll select the envelope and find out which set of questions we've got.
4.
Jordan's gone with 4. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'll go number 1.
Well, you got to agree on a.
Oh right, I thought we picked
so I didn't
one
explain
each.
That very well.
Oh, go on. Yeah, Jordan picks number 4.
We've got have you ever? Oh no, yeah, we have. We've got have you ever? Right. So quick fire. Don't take too long to answer. Mm-hmm. But I'll ask you both. We'll start off with. Okay, have you ever stolen anything from work?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got half Harlem University in this gym.
I was going to say, I don't know whether to ask you that one, Danny.
Only a few tape measures. We're all right.
A few tape measures, all right.
The technician's office is going to come down hunting after me.
Elaine will be there banging on the door in the morning. Give us me tape measures. Jordan, what about you? What have you? Can I ask what you stole from work?
Yeah, so when you're on the undercards of the fights, not in title fights, you get given a set of gloves, but you have to give them back to the promoters. So
Right.
a lot of the time when I'm in a 6-rounder or an 8-rounder, a bit earlier on in my career, when you weren't allowed to keep the gloves, I used to put them in my bag and nip off to McDonald's and try and forget about trying to avoid them at all costs. Get a free pair of gloves.
All right, next one. Have you ever sung in public?
Yes.
Yeah.
Me and Danny both have on my stag do.
Okay.
I chose 50 Cent PIMP, which is a big mistake. I was only thinking about the chorus. There's actually quite a lot of fast rapping in between.
You got a new appreciation for rapping skills.
Yeah, don't choose rap when you're doing karaoke. Danny, what's your karaoke choice?
Gangster's Paradise.
Okay.
Where I did end up forgetting the words and then just said a load of expletives. But I was at 18th birthday party and it was at a cricket pavilion, so very long and thin. And all my mates were at the bar at the back, but all the grandparents and the kids were at the front of the karaoke. And I just had to stay there for another 2 minutes and just style it out. It was embarrassing, but I reckon I could give a good crack at it now.
Yeah. Have you ever used a fake name?
Most times when I go to Starbucks.
Yeah, when they thought we were Australian in Chicago.
Yeah, we went to the Starbucks was on the way to the gym when we was training in Chicago, and every day we used to go in. So the first day we went in, ordered a coffee like normal. The second day we went in, it was like, "Hey Kim, the Australian guys are back." And so from then on, we were just putting on the most ridiculous Australian accents. Can I have a cappuccino, please? Great.
That's pretty good, actually.
Thank you.
Have you ever eaten a snack in your bag that you're not sure how long it had been there for?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I knew you would have.
Probably the other day. It's kind of subconscious. Probably I've probably done it before, but I'm thinking about the most recent one. Is where I've just ate a Cheerio on the floor. My 14-month-old daughter is obsessed with Cheerios, and she just comes out with a box of Cheerios, and she's just eating one Cheerio at a time. And I was cleaning up the other day, and there was this one Cheerio on the floor, and I just put it in my mouth, and I just went, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" I'm not addicted to having a snack.
Yeah.
So I know where she gets it from. Just random eating one Cheerio at a time.
Honestly, I promised myself when my daughter was born that I wouldn't be the sort of parent that, like when you see parents who finish their kids' food off. So if a kid has an ice cream and doesn't finish it, I was like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna finish that. That's gross. I lasted about 3 years. And I was just hoover up everything.
Oh, it's impossible. I hoover up everything.
Have you ever given somebody a fake number?
No.
I probably are.
You probably.
Them awkward people that come up and try and sell you something in the street. Just say, "Oh yeah, I'm interested," and be really polite, and then just give them a fake number when you're actually not interested.
And last one then. Have you ever pretended that you liked a meal that someone cooked for you?
Yes, my girlfriend made a carbonara once, and it was just scrambled egg and pasta basically with a bit of bacon in it. And I said, "It's great. This is the best thing you've ever made." Egg and pasta.
I mean, is she still your girlfriend?
Yeah.
Does she know that you didn't actually like it?
She does now, yeah.
All right. Well, that was the game that I still haven't thought of a good name for. Thanks for playing.
It's been a pleasure.
All right. So look. I want to thank you both so much for your time this evening. I've just got a couple of final questions before we wrap things up, if that's all right. Danny, I'm going to come to you first for this. I don't know. You said Boxing Science is 9 years old. It's going to be 9 years old. Obviously, you've worked in S&C for a lot longer than that. What's your? You might need to take a little bit of time to think about this, but if you were going to drop one knowledge bomb on our listeners from your time working in S&C, working in boxing, what would that be?
I think I'm thinking of two things. Probably one of the main skills that I think that I've got is having the awareness and self-awareness of actions, of other people's situations, strengths and areas for improvement as well, and also having to deal with difficult situations. Now, I've been in like a lot of training camps where things have gone wrong, and then the outcome has gone wrong as well. But them things that have gone wrong in training camp weren't dealt with. So you've always got to kind of grasp that situation. So my granddad always used to say, grasp the nettle. Like the nettle is going to hurt you anyway, whether you kind of touch it or feel it or take a minute or an hour. So that nettle is going to hurt anyway. So you might as well get hold of it and get it done. So you have to deal with difficult situations head on, and that's probably like, and being in a sport like boxing, there's so many of these different situations that arise, whether it's somebody that looks like they're not going to make weight, or they're injured, or they're skipping sessions, or they're not quite hitting the numbers what's needed. There's things that you can do 6 weeks out that can rectify that situation, rather than it being unraveling into a fight where there's no going back and there's a massive setback into that person's career. Yeah. And there's been loads of situations where things have happened towards the back end of training camp and in the fight, when really I think, like, when I actually look back, actually that could have been avoided if we did something 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, whatever. And that's kind of what I've learned over the years, and that's kind of how I approach situations now. Yeah. So some athletes that I work with now probably think I'm a bit of a stickler for detail, but that's because I'm dealing with things up front rather than waiting till fight night and waiting for it to all unravel there. So
yeah. I guess sometimes that can mean having some difficult conversations.
Yeah,
well.
Difficult conversations, you got to have them, and difficult situations, and you've got to overcome them. So grasp the nettle. That's the phrase.
Grasp the nettle. I like it. Jordan, then last word to you. If you think, I guess, over the last couple of years, what would you say you've learned about yourself? Maybe about your own mental approach to the sport, or maybe even just in life in general. What have your experiences taught you about yourself over the last sort of, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years?
It's a very good question. It's hard. I think sometimes I've had a little bit of time away from the sport and been waiting for a fight date. A lot of the time I've been ready, I've been training, but then there's been spells where, I've had time out the gym, and, it does make you appreciate what you do. It makes you appreciate the sport that you're in, and enjoying it, because it's not gonna last forever. There's a time span on your boxing career, because you can't go on boxing until you're 40 or 50 years old. Every boxer's got a prime, and I think for me, what I've learned about myself is you see the best of me when I'm enjoying it, and if you don't enjoy something, don't do it. And I think sometimes when you're younger, you feel pressured into doing certain things, or you feel like you should, you know, be doing certain things, or doing certain things in a certain way, and it can suck the enjoyment out of it. And I think if you're doing something that's natural to you, and something that does come natural, something that's been ingrained in you, and something that is, part of your life, it should come naturally. And to take the enjoyment out of that makes it unnatural. And I think for me, that's what I've learned about myself. How Brent was that, Danny?
Very Brent.
Thank you.
No, brilliant, mate.
No, it's fantastic. And again, it's such an important message, I guess, because a lot of people spend so much of their lives and so much of their time doing things that they really don't enjoy. And, you know, so to hear from you that, like, finding that enjoyment and kind of finding the joy in what you're doing is such an important part of it. I think it's really an important message to get across. Again, I just want to thank you so much, both of you, for your time on the podcast this evening. So I guess all that's left for me to do is kind of wrap it up and say, Jordan, Gill, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And Danny Wilson, thank you as well for taking the time out this evening to come speak to us.
Cheers, Pete. Really enjoyed that. Brilliant.
Awesome. Well, I hope you lot out there in listener land enjoyed the episode as well. Do make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, but do visit the website as well, 80percentmental.com, or follow us on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode or on any of the other fantastic conversations that I've had this series. Leaving a review on Apple Podcasts would be super smashing and great. So if you've got a couple of minutes, go and maybe do that now if you want. Anyway, more to come this series, but thanks once again to Danny Wilson and to Jordan Gill for coming on the 80% Mental podcast. And I will see you next time. I won't see you though, will I? Because it's a podcast.